My name is Alice Monroe. I'm 18 years old and I am one of the last humans left alive. I was never meant to be a survivor. I had a normal life once. School, friends, boys. Now, all of that is gone, burned away in the fire of red winter. The president had always been a little off. The news anchors whispered about it with tight smiles, late-night comedians made cruel jokes, and the opposition raged in futile protest. But when he pressed the button, when he set the world on fire, it wasn't funny anymore. The war began in an instant and ended almost as quickly. The nuclear payloads were few, just enough to scald the earth, but not quite enough to turn it to glass. The real horror came after, in the silent wind, the twisting, spore-ridden gusts that slithered across continents and through cities. They called it Red Winter. Somewhere, deep in black site laboratories hidden beneath mountains and frozen wastelands, scientists had conjured up unholy things, plagues that chewed through flesh, toxins that restructured DNA, viruses that could rewrite what it meant to be human. And now, released into the world, those things did their work. In the first weeks, the dead walked. Not in the stumbling, slack-jawed way of old horror movies, but fast, screaming and purposeful. They were flesh-hungry, their eyes leaking black, their minds filled with something that was almost intelligence. The old world had fallen, but these creatures didn't care. They only wanted to spread, to feed, to run. Then came the changelings, the ones who weren't quite human anymore. Some had gaping maws that split their faces in half, like flowers blooming in slow motion. Others grew extra limbs, or hardened shells, or eyes that could see beyond the veil of time. They whispered to each other in languages no man had spoken before, clicking and hissing in the shadows of collapsed skyscrapers. And finally, the sky opened, not with fire, but with things that had been waiting. The scientists had played too deep, reached too far. The biological weapons had been built not just to kill, but to unmake, to summon. And now they came. Things that were not meant for this world, that oozed through the cracks in reality, bending physics, changing everything they touched. Only a few remained untouched, hidden in underground bunkers, clinging to the ruins of old military bases, praying in the forgotten cathedrals where the dead refused to walk. They tried to rebuild, to keep the last embers of humanity from dying out completely. But it was hard. Supplies were dwindling, minds were breaking, and every night the howls came closer. One by one, the survivors fell, torn apart, twisted into something new, or simply swallowed by the ever-growing void that had once been the sky. And in the White House, now a crumbling husk of stone and memory, something still sat in the Oval Office. It had once been the president. Now it was something else. It watched the ruins through dead, silver eyes and smiled. The war had never been about winning. It had always been about becoming something new. Deep beneath the ground, in the old subway tunnels of what had once been New York City, I moved through the ruins with my group. Dr. Elaine Carter led us, once a scientist, now just another survivor with too many ghosts. "Keep moving," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant guttural cries from above. "We need to reach the next supply cache before sundown." There were 6 of us now. Once we had been more. I tried not to think about the ones we had lost. I focused on the present, on my aching legs, on the weight of my knife in my hand. Talking was dangerous, so we stayed quiet. The creatures above were always listening. A distant explosion rumbled through the tunnels. Dust rained down from above. Elaine stopped, holding up a fist to halt the group. "That came from the surface," muttered Jacob, the former soldier who had become her de facto bodyguard. "We need to go the other way." No, Elaine said. We need to see what's happening. If someone is still fighting back, we need to know. Jacob exhaled through his nose but didn't argue. He knew better. In this world, hesitation got you killed. We climbed up a service ladder, emerging into the remains of Central Park. The sky was a bruised shade of red, thick with roiling clouds that pulsed like living things. In the distance, they saw the source of the explosion, a group of survivors, ragged but armed, battling a horde of the fast ones. The creatures shrieked, their bodies contorting as they sprinted toward the humans. My heart pounded. There was no saving them, I knew that. But there was something else, something massive moving beyond the battle, a shape too large, too alien, shifting between the ruins like a living nightmare. Then it turned its head and I knew it had seen us. Run, I whispered. Now. We bolted, diving back into the tunnels as the first inhuman roar split the air behind us. I didn't look back. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. We ran for what felt like forever. The sound of our own ragged breathing filled the tunnels, drowning out the distant wails of the creatures hunting above. I stumbled, nearly falling, but Jacob caught my arm and yanked me forward. No stopping, he hissed. We made it back to one of our safe houses, an old maintenance hub buried beneath the ruins of the city. It was cold, damp, and smelled like rot, but it was home, at least for now. We can't keep running forever, I said, catching my breath. Sooner or later, they're going to find us. Elaine nodded grimly. That's why we have to get to the CDC ruins. If there's even a chance that the cure is there, we have to take it. If it even still exists, Jacob muttered, rubbing a hand over his face. And even if we find it, who says we can even make it work? I looked at each of them, my chest still heaving from the sprint. What choice do we have? If we stay here, we die. If we go out there, we might die. At least one of those gives us a shot. Elaine met my gaze and nodded. We leave at dawn. I sat down against the cold concrete wall and pulled my knees to my chest. The howls still echoed in the distance. I was tired. So tired, but I wasn't going to give up. Because even in the heart of hell, I still wanted to live.